Welcome back to another episode of the North Star Takes podcast. I'm Bailey Paulicki. He's Jacob Liberta. And we're a Minnesota sports podcast. So if you're a Minnesota sports fan, especially a Minnesota Vikings fan, smash that like button and subscribe to our channel. And today we're going to be talking more Minnesota Vikings because why not? They're 1-0. They beat the Green Bay Packers. And all of a sudden they're rising up everyone's power rankings as about a week ago, they were probably somewhere between 15th and 20th on most people's power rankings. Now a lot of the national talking heads have them somewhere, if not in the top 5, definitely in the top 10. So, and all of that, of course, is, in large part to the coaching change with Kevin O'Connell. Comes in, makes the offense look fantastic against Green Bay. A very clean game offensively. Liberta, do you think the Vikings struck gold with a guy like Kevin O'Connell, especially after you watch maybe the meltdown that the Denver Broncos had on Monday night, knowing Nathaniel Hackett? They did have some interest in him initially in the coaching search early on. Jim Harbaugh as well was, very close to being a Minnesota Vikings coach. Like, do you think that they got this right and they struck gold with getting the young Rams offensive coordinator?
I know it's early and we've only played a game, so a lot remains to be seen, but it sure feels that way. I think everything that's happened this offseason felt like there's been a good process behind it, and I think it seems like there's a great partnership between O'Connell and Kwesi, which is huge for roster building, not only for this season but beyond in future years, and just building a strong foundation for years to come for us to not only be winners this year, but winners for years to come. So I think, and then kind of looking at it in a micro level and coming down to this first game, what we've seen so far, it obviously looks fantastic. And we didn't miss a beat, even though we played 0 starters in the preseason, other than the offensive line got a little bit of work in that first preseason game in Vegas. But other than that, like especially all the skill position guys just didn't see the field then. And I know that's definitely come under fire here after the results of the week 1 games. How it's like, oh man, I think everybody's got to get a little run preseason, but for this team, that was not the case. Like I think they played exactly how we should, and how I'd like them to just avoid injuries, because those injuries in the preseason are just the worst. So
Yeah.
like I'm glad we did that, and it turned out to not matter coming out in this week 1 game. And O'Connell looked like he was absolutely in control that whole time, wire to wire, against the best team in the NFC over the last 3 years. I know they haven't made the Super Bowl. That's definitely another conversation as far as winning playoff games. But as far as regular season teams goes, the Packers have been as good as it gets. So ever since LaFleur's been there, so that's a big win to get right away at home against your biggest rivals at home in the primetime slot on Fox. Like
Yes.
it doesn't get any better than that. So I think for Kirk, especially, talk about your quarterback, talk about the most important position on your team, and he just looks like a different guy. Looks like he looks way more empowered as a leader. Everybody's seen the post-game locker room speech where he gave game balls to Kwesi and KOC on with approval from ownership, and really taking charge of that, and looking about as good as basically an ideal version of what you'd want him to be in a big game like this. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's big. And then for the rest of the team, the rest of this offense, especially, that first half was amazing, and I'm excited for what's to come. So yeah, it certainly feels like we're turning in the right direction, and it seems like we've got this higher right. But again, this is pretty early. We only played a game, so we'll see what we look like after we lose one. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, I agree. It is early, but the hype is most certainly there. I mean, just from a leadership standpoint, he is head and shoulders above where Mike Zimmer was. You can tell the
Yes,
players respect him. There's that fire on the sideline, and it's a good kind of fire too. It's not a pissed off kind of fire, screaming at guys. I mean, he was
it's a
fist
competitive fire.
pumping. Yeah, very competitive. Exactly. Hugging guys as they're coming back to the sideline, patting them on the helmet. All stuff like that. It's small things, and they're professional athletes, but at the same time, and if it makes them feel better, it'll make them perform better. And I've just been super impressed with everything I've seen from him, everything I've heard from him. There's clips going around now. He's breaking down film on the Vikings Entertainment Network. I mean, he's breaking down film of what they're doing on defense and what Ed Donatell's running on defense, and he's explaining all these different concepts. And it's like, now imagine if Mike Zimmer was first of all, breaking down film with Vikings Entertainment Network, and then on top of it, breaking down their offensive plays. I mean, I don't know. You would never see that out of a guy like Zimmer. And I love the full transparency from a guy like O'Connell, especially like, he'll talk about injuries openly and he doesn't mess around with anything like that. Doesn't keep anything under wraps. So he's very open, very transparent. And I feel like that's just kind of the way the entire, front office all the way down through the coaching staff is structured. Everything's very transparent. There's great communication. There's obviously collaboration, and you know, I'm really starting to believe that a competitive rebuild might actually be possible here because granted they kept most of the same roster from last year, but this at the same time they drafted players that really have good potential and they're young and most of them are on the defensive side of the ball. Lewis Seen, we don't need him to play right away. He missed week one. We don't need him to play, but he's certainly going to be an important piece moving forward.
Mhm.
Andrew Booth, he did get hurt week one, but you hope that's nothing serious and he's able to contribute to this team as a depth corner this year. I mean, as a second round pick, you'd hope he's valuable and helpful moving forward. Ed Ingram, he's already starting at right guard. I mean, they finally found a right guard for this team to start. So that's exciting. And, Brian Asamoah, the intriguing linebacker, and it goes on and on through these draft picks that they've had. Just very intriguing pieces all the way up and down this draft. And so I think that's interesting. They brought in a tight end in Johnny Munt, who by no means is anything special, but clearly O'Connell likes his game. He played more than Irv Smith did last Sunday. And, from a blocking and, being able to catch a couple ball standpoint, he's probably just fine as a second tight end, considering we don't really need, two legit tight ends in this offense. So I'm pretty excited about, the possibility that a competitive rebuild is possible. You know, I'd still love to see us draft and develop our own quarterback here within the next couple of years. But at the same time, if he can maximize Kirk Cousins and get Kirk to play near an MVP level, and if we can see that kind of Kirk we saw last Sunday for most, I'm not expecting it for every game, but for most of a season, I mean, that would be really impressive and a job well done. So I just everything seems so much better right now. And like you said, it's only one game, but it's been impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to build off here, a lot to be excited about, a lot of purple Kool-Aid to drink, I guess. I think there's definitely, I mean, you just listen to him talk and you listen to how intelligent he sounds, how insightful, and how he doesn't come off as like a know-it-all, but he comes
Mm-hmm.
off that like you just it's in a way where it's like you just know that he knows everything there is to know about what he wants to do offensively, and he's not gonna hold back at all either. I think this guy's very transparent, and you can see that too when he talks to the media, talks to everybody, getting all these publications, and yeah, I mean I could go on and on. I guess right now as far as the optimism level there is. So
Right.
I just think all in all, it's a great thing that we are where we are right now. It feels like, and it feels like they chose the right path, at least at this point, when we're looking back and reflecting on the offseason.
Absolutely. Let's jump into our week two preview here, Liberta. Probably one of the more difficult games on the schedule. And we kind of thought that going into the season too. The Eagles got all the preseason hype. They did barely beat the Lions last week, but they still put up a lot of points. They ran the ball all over them, which is slightly concerning considering our run defense still didn't look amazing against Green Bay. So yeah, let's talk about the Philly Eagles, Liberta, Monday Night Football. Kirk Cousins is kryptonite historically. What are your thoughts going into this game? Do you like our chances? And I guess what do you think is going to be the key to beating this Eagles team?
Yeah, I don't love our chances. I feel like there's there's always it's gonna be a hostile crowd in Philadelphia, and like that's the way it always is, always has been, and always will be. But you think about it, and then you can combine that with Kirk's lack of success on Monday Night Football, and it's early season. There's probably still a bit more ironing out to the offense to do, where guys get more comfortable with our system and just really knowing it like the back of their hand. And there's a little bit of cautious. I'm gonna be a little cautious here when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to this game, just because I feel like I gotta pump the brakes at least a little bit. Only playing one game so far, but I mean what we've seen so far is great. But going into this week two game against what most believe to be one of the top teams in the NFC, especially with Dak out of the picture, now a clear cut NFC East favorite. So like this is a team that will be probably hosting at least a playoff game come January, if not more. So I think this will be a good litmus test yet again here to begin the season. I know we had the Packers last week. Now we got the Eagles, and I think
Yep.
these are both playoff teams. So I'm really curious to see what we got, especially on the road when we're not in the friendly confines of US Bank Stadium. So I want to see how our game translates and see if this offense looks as smooth as it did this past week, and then the defense hopefully can stop the run pretty pretty well, or hopefully are get better at doing that, just because Philly, they run the ball about as good as anybody in the league. I mean, they have four. I know I mentioned this in our last Vikings video, but Philly had 4 rushing touchdowns, or 4 different guys score on the ground, and then they last year that was basically what carried them to the playoffs, was a rushing attack. And then last week we obviously gave up. I think it was over 6 yards a carry to the Packers. They didn't get to run that much because they were playing from behind the whole time, which hopefully that can play into our hands yet again this week. I think that's going to be important, which leads into probably my biggest X factor, I guess, biggest thing to look for is if the Vikings are winning this game, I think they're going to have to start fast and really put Philly on their heels and make them play from behind too, like they did the Packers, so they can't really utilize that run game as much.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is definitely going to be a massive test for this team. Hostile environment, Kevin O'Connell's first road game. How is he going to be able to handle the communication with Kirk Cousins when it's super loud in there? Yeah, it's, Philly never gives me a good feeling. Doesn't really matter who the quarterback is. Going back to the Nick Foles NFC Championship, it's a tough team to play. So
yeah, I think that's always going to be ingrained in our brains, though. Just
yeah.
even subconsciously, you could just think back to that game and think bad thoughts, because like we're arguably as good as we've ever seen, and we just got pummeled. So it's like that doesn't really give you good feelings. But
right, yeah. And here's what I'll say about Jalen Hurts. I think he can be a really good fantasy football quarterback. I'm not entirely sure he can be a really good NFL quarterback that's, successful and can really win you games. So I really think we need to test him a little bit. You got to be able to shut down that running game, make him throw the ball. Because I know he did pretty well last week, but albeit it was the Lions and AJ Brown went off. But I want to make Jalen Hurts beat us, because I'm still not entirely convinced that he's that great. I mean, even last year, he really didn't look good, and that team kind of dragged into the playoffs because, the rest of the NFC was just not, worth a crap. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. I think if they can come out of here 2-0, I mean, that's going to say a lot about this team. You'll have arguably the toughest 2-game stretch of your season done. A tough Green Bay game at home, albeit the Packers, weren't, you could just tell they were kind of all out of sorts. And then you got Philly on the road. 2 projected division winners before the season started. If you can go 2-0 against them, I mean, you're kind of home free. Then you get Lions, Bears, Saints, Dolphins. You get all these teams before the bye that aren't really that scary. Then all of a sudden you're at your bye week. Maybe you got 4 or 5 wins, and I don't know. I mean, that could be really exciting. So, I'm excited for this game. I hope O'Connell can kind of help with the whole Kirk Cousins on Monday night thing.
yeah,
And if he can kind of keep scheming this up where it's really hard to defend Jefferson, or if they're going to truly double Jefferson, then obviously that'll leave guys like Thielen and Osborne open. Basically, as long as Kirk knows where to look, I think we're going to be just fine. So, and then of course there's the Dalvin Cook factor too, where I think a lot of people expect Philly's run defense to be good, but DeAndre Swift kind of ran all over them last week. So, maybe Dalvin Cook can kind of gash him a little bit too. So, I guess any other thoughts for you on the game, and then I'm going to ask you what your score prediction is.
Yeah, I'd love to see Dalvin pop a couple big runs. I think those are always signature, and I think those always come in Vikings wins. So let's hope we see a little bit of that on Monday night. And I'm feeling like this will be a very entertaining game to watch, albeit in week 2. And I know, well, football seasons get going, that's when excitement feels really high. But I think this is just 2 teams that could potentially be, I don't know, maybe play each other in the playoffs after this regular season concludes. Who knows? But maybe I'm getting a little ahead of my skis too. But I'm pretty excited to see what both teams really bring to the table in such a big early season spot.
Right. So what is your score prediction?
Last week I came on here and I said the Vikings would win, and then after that I was thinking the next couple days a little worried we'd lose, but inevitably this week, and they won. But inevitably this week, I think we're going to come back to reality a little bit. I'm thinking we're going to lose a pretty gritty, maybe kind of ugly game, and I think our offense will show that we're just in the early stages of having a new head coach, and I think the defense won't be quite as down as they were last week. It's pretty hard to do that. So I'm thinking we lose, I'm going to say 26-20.
Okay.
I'm thinking that's where I'm landing on this. What do you think, Bailey?
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling a loss too. I think 2-0, it seems almost too good to be true with a brand new head
Yeah,
coach.
exactly.
Seems too good to be true with a Kirk Cousins led team. I don't
Yeah,
want to hate
true.
on Kirk because he played fantastic, but it's like I still can't until I see it with this collection.
Yes.
I don't know if I can really believe it. So I'm going to say they lose as well. I'm going to say it's a close game. Probably I'm going to say they lose 20-17. Low scoring, ugly, like you said. It'll probably come down to like a last second field goal of some sort, but yeah, just not a great feeling about this game. There's a multitude of factors. Philadelphia, Monday Night Football, on the road, all sorts of different things. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope we're both wrong, and they can improve to 2-0. And because yeah, if they do get to 2-0, there's gonna be a lot of people talking about this team potentially being one of, if not the best team in the NFC.
Yes, absolutely. And for what it's worth, I think Kirk is 2-0 against the Eagles with the Vikings. So
Okay.
I think we got him back that first year we had Kirk. We won an early season game in the rematch NFC Championship. And then I think we had one of our best offensive performances, I think, in the Kirk era. I think it was 2019.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Diggs went off that game.
Yes, he was just torching. I think it was Rasul Douglas or something. Yeah, like
Hmm.
that. That was one of the most memorable games I can think of really in the Kirk era. So, like, hopefully you see a little bit more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of forgot that. I think historically Kirk actually plays pretty well against the Eagles, not just with
Mhm.
the Vikings, but going back to Washington as
I,
well.
I
So,
think you're right.
so maybe that factors into it too. But it'll be interesting to watch and see, and we'll break it all down once that game's over as well. So that will do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Please click the like button on this video, and feel free to subscribe to our channel as well for more Minnesota sports conversations. Feel free to give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram. And let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think about Kevin O'Connell? Do you think the Vikings struck gold by getting him to be their head coach? And any thoughts you have on this Philadelphia Eagles Week 2 matchup that could potentially be one of the tougher games of the season? So leave your comments below. And until next time, thanks for watching.